carrying the trophy for the 19th time, ladies and gentlemen. On this Testimonial night, it is indeed in the football history of Malta to have Gary Neville actually salute the world of football through Malta, from our island.
So hush, little baby, don't you cry. One of these mornings, you're gonna rise up singing. Then you'll spread your wings, you're gonna take the sky. With daddy and mommy standing by you do. La 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 la.
Well, you've been in football in the 60s and 70s.
Right.
If you could pick one thing that football lost since then and one thing that football gained since then.
That is a very difficult question, isn't it?
It is,
to ask at this stage of the evening, anyway.
No, okay, fair enough.
If you'd have asked me a bit earlier, I'll give you an answer.
Okay.
No, this is my second time in Malta. I was here way back in 1967 when we played Hibs, I think.
That's right, yes.
Do you remember that? And we battered them 1-0. On a gravel pitch. We were very lucky to actually win. So, but in those days, of course, all we saw was the hotel, the ground, and the airport.
Yeah.
This is my second time, and I really thoroughly enjoyed it. I've been able to go around and see what a beautiful island. And it's lovely to be here tonight. My daughter is involved with Gary, of course, with the Testimonial. But it's lovely to be here and see this fantastic Manchester United supporters. I can't believe when I come in tonight and I walked in here, I just couldn't believe it. I thought it was a set for a film. It was just unbelievable that so many people are here. And to be perfectly honest with you, to honour a terrific player who's been an absolute fantastic professional player for Manchester United in Gary Neville. So, without any other questions, but I can't answer anyway, I would just like to say thank you very much to Gary for a marvellous and Manchester United Supporters Club here.
Cheers to Gary Neville. Hip hip! Hip hip! Hip hip! And thank you very much to the King! The King!
I was youth team manager, or call it youth team coach, whichever people describe me as, for 20 years at Manchester United. And I remember vividly the day that Alec Ferguson came to the club. I could call him Alec Ferguson because he wasn't a surname. And he reminded me straight away that I had the best job in football. Yes, I did have the best job in football, but I thought, that is pressure. Believe you me, that is pressure. When he said that, because I knew what he was after. he was after players to get into Manchester United's first team and stay there as long as the lads did stay there. Unbelievable players. It's incredible, but you need a little bit of luck on the way. And I certainly got a lot of luck. I got really lucky when the Manchester United scouts, who were absolutely brilliant, brought in the best crop of youngsters since the Busby Babes. That's without question. I'll argue with anybody on that. Without question, the best crop since the Busby Babes. I knew a lot about the Busby Babes because my dad was born in Manchester. He came into Yorkshire, where I still live, married my mother, but he told me all about the Busby Babes. And when I joined Manchester United, I thought, we'll never ever get anywhere near that. I think we got fairly close. And I'm not saying that they were better than the Busby Babes, but they were very, very close. So that was it was a really great start for me because I knew how passionate Alec Ferguson was about youth team football. And I knew because I'd been round to houses with the manager, and he always targeted the mother when he was trying to sign a young boy. Very, very clever. And he said to them, if your boy joins Manchester United, first thing he will get is a very, very good apprenticeship. He didn't talk about scholars like they talk these days. He talked about, because probably he worked in the shipyards, and he talked about apprenticeship. And he says, if your boy is good enough, I will play him in the first team. That is massive to a parent, because just think, if my boy's good enough, the manager of Manchester United is going to play him. And how many has he played? How many youngsters has he played? And we've got some more up-and-coming youngsters now, the ones who won the Youth Cup. The Youth Cup's very, very important to Manchester United. And Alec Ferguson wants to win the Youth Cup. He really does, because he thinks, like I think, that if you can play on the big stage in the Youth Cup final and you can win the Youth Cup, you've got a really good chance of playing in the first team. And that's what youth team managers are all about. So, as I say, I got lucky because in this group came the fantastic players. But what you've got to do to sort out, first and foremost, you've got to understand whether they've got the talent, the technical ability to play Manchester United's first team. I soon found out that they certainly had the talent. Now, did they have the determination? Did they have the desire? Every single day in training, were they going to give 100%? Because that's what it takes to be a Manchester United player. Not just talent, dedication, sacrifice. You can't be going out with your pals at night. You've got to be sacrificed, because every day in training you come, with open eyes, ready for action, and you've got to give absolutely 100% every single time you go out in training. Training is so important. But then, Alec Ferguson and myself, I don't call him sir because I don't think he wants to be called sir. We spoke hour after hour after hour about them. And we virtually knew the ones that were going to get in the first team. That's not overlooking the rest of the ones that didn't, because they've gone on to have fantastic careers, people like Keith Gillespie, Robert Savage, that kind of guy, and I was proud of them all. But it's a daunting task when you work for Manchester United. It's a fantastic club, the best club in the world, but it's a daunting task. And then I was looking at players, ones with the attitude, ones with the technical ability, and thinking, yes. I saw one young player who didn't have the same technical ability as, for instance, we'll just say David Beckham and Paul Scholes and Ryan Giggs. But he had unbelievable desire, unbelievable determination, and he made himself into a player with that. I didn't make him a player, he made him a player. He made himself a player, and that was Gary Neville. '85 caps for England. How many games? I can't remember. 700, 800 games and all that business. He was the best English fullback of his generation, without doubt. And people still don't think he was any good, especially Liverpool supporters. Right, so a wonderful example, and when I talk to kids in grassroots football, and I do talk a lot to kids in grassroots football, they all want to know about David Beckham, Paul Scholes, Ryan Giggs, especially David Beckham for obvious reasons. But then I talk more about Gary Neville, and they're staggered, they're amazed that I talk about him. I said, well, yeah, you can do it. You can do it as a young player, if you've got the desire, the determination and all that, because I mentioned, and I don't think Gary will mind me saying that, you know, his technical ability wasn't as good. It grew better and better and better. And I would rather talk to kids and tell them they have a chance that every single day they practice. You know, they may not be at a professional football club, but they practice, and they practice and practice some more. And that's what Gary did, along with all the other players. But I vividly remember working with Gary when everybody gone off the pitch, gone off the training pitch, and we were just working on control and passing. My legs were dropping off, absolutely dropping off. And it was simple, basic football practices, and that helped him immensely to improve as a player. Now, what we got there as a player with then as good ability as David Beckham, Paul Scholes, Ryan Giggs, that played in a different position. And we got a player who was captain. He was a captain, he was a leader. And people questioned my sense when I made him the youth team captain, when we had Paul Scholes, Ryan Giggs, David Beckham, a lot of fantastic players. I did that because he knew more about the game than all the other players. He knew how to play as a team. He was a leader. Him and Chris Casper at the back, they ran the show, believe you me. And Chris, you know, a fantastic player was Chris, and he was unfortunate to have a lot of injuries. Now, I'm not talking about the so-called big hitters. I'm talking about people in the team that you need. I knew that when they went out in football matches, whether it's youth cup games, league games or what, they would run the show. And they bossed everybody about. They were absolutely fantastic. But we're here tonight to really talk about Gary Neville. He inspired me more than I inspired him with what he did on the training pitch. Nobody has worked harder than Gary Neville on the training pitch and in the games we've played. So good luck to Gary. We're going to get him up next. And it can be done. You know, you parents, and you've got children, and they're desperate to be a professional footballer. It can be done. But what they've got to do, they've been totally dedicated, and they've got to practice and practice and practice and practice some more. So I think I can now get Gary Neville up. Up you come, Gary. It's your turn. You're getting grilled now. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. So basically what you're saying is that I was average, with a big mouth, and I worked hard. Thank you. I'd like to thank you all for coming this evening. I'm absolutely overwhelmed at the venue. I like this a lot. I never would have thought that when I came here in 1993, when we had 8 championships, and it was our first for 26 years, that I would be standing here 18 years later, just having finished playing for Man United, having won 19 championships. So my speech is gone. To have 1,200 people here tonight, I don't believe that you people are here on behalf of me. I'd like to think that I'm here to thank you for everything that you've done for me during my career, for supporting me and the other players, and for the fans everywhere around the world, because one of the great adrenaline rush that we get, if we didn't play in front of fans that were passionate, it would mean nothing to us. And that's what keeps us going, the badge, the shirt, and you people. So thank you very much. There are some thank yous, and if you'll forgive me, I will make sure that I don't miss out people. I'd like to thank the Leader of the Opposition for joining us tonight. Thank you very much. To Joseph and the Supporters Club Committee for all the work that you've put in. I know how hard you've worked, and I really do thank you for that. Thank you. To my Maltese father, John Buttigieg, for looking after me for all these years. Thank you so much, John. I know you can't do enough for me, and I really do respect it. Thank you. To my dad, for the work that you've done and always have done for me and looked after me and my mum. Thank you very much. I love you a lot. To Winston and his team, I know I've got a bit of bias here, but the food was fantastic. To serve 1,200 people in such an organised fashion with such quality is a real fantastic effort. Thank you very much. Thank you. To the sponsors, of which an evening like this can't happen without, thank you very much for all your support. When Sir Alex Ferguson says that you're the best player that he's ever seen, then you know you need to take notice. And I thank Dennis for coming tonight. I know that sometimes in the last few weeks since I finished playing, the word legend has been used, but that word should be saved for people like Dennis Law. Thank you, Dennis, for coming. Thank you. Eric, to you, I know he says that I made myself a player. I joined Manchester United at the age of 16, hoping to give my very best, not knowing what was going to happen. But I had somebody who believed in me, and for 2 years we did have an apprenticeship. There were 14 of us. We all worked as hard as each other, I believe. Every time I ran, it looked like I was working harder maybe, but it was easier for others. But I always remember about 3 or 4 months into my apprenticeship, we used to go into Eric's office one by one every month. It was like the walk of death. And wait to see what Eric would say to us. And we would be tested in every single way. Some months he would criticise us, other months he would praise us, to see how you reacted to it, to see how you would become potentially a Manchester United player. And I remember one month, it was 3 or 4 months in, he said to me, "Gary," he said, "you've surprised me and you have a chance." And when you hear that as a Manchester United fan, someone who supported the club from the age of 5, and this is your mentor, then to be honest with you, you really feel proud. And from that moment on, really, I always felt confident that I would become a Manchester United player, and it is down to you, Eric, because you gave me the belief. Thank you. I first came here in 1993, as has already been said, and Joe Glanville was the president of the club at the time and looked after us absolutely brilliantly. I came over with David Beckham, with Ben Thorne, with Chris Casper, with Ryan Giggs, with Paul Ince. I didn't know what to expect of this island. I'd never been before. We'd always been on holidays as a family to other places, and the people were absolutely incredible. At the time, we were just youth team players, just like Larnell and Jesse tonight, yet we were treated exactly the same way in which Ryan Giggs and Paul Ince and everybody else was treated. I call it my Manchester with a sun. And the supporters club, we visited the supporters club, and I couldn't believe that this was the oldest supporters club in the world, that so many people were so passionate. It was my first exposure to see how powerful Manchester United were all around the world. And I always say to anybody who's never seen Manchester United fans in other parts of the world, when they're in Manchester with me, I always say to them, you need to go and see the fans in Malta, in other parts of the world, because they are so passionate about this club. But that trip was so important for me. Not only did Ben introduce me to Woodpecker, we grew a spirit as a group that, to be honest with you, would never be broken. That youth team, we'd just been to 2 Youth Cup finals. We'd just been given professional contracts, every single player. and we believed so much that we would go on to become Manchester United football players. And we had a spirit between us as a group that on that trip was even more. You couldn't break us. And when we broke into the first team, sort of 2 years later, by that time we were so confident in our ability. We'd watched the club through 20 years of non-success, and we were desperate to make this club successful. You needed one man to believe in us, and Eric mentions Sir Alex Ferguson. For all the work that players may put in as young players at United, that Eric put in with us, you need a manager who's got courage and bravery and belief in young people. And he always said to us as young players, and I think Eric has told the story, if you're good enough, you will get the chance. And to be honest with you, that's all you can ask from your boss. He believed that young people, given them the opportunity, they can surprise you. And when, in 1995, Mark Hughes, Andrei Kanchelskis, Paul Ince, Paul Parker, Steve Bruce, and players like this were moved away for 6 kids, everyone thought he was going mad. The local newspaper actually held a poll to say that should he be sacked. But he trusted in us, and at the time we were a little bit unnerved by it as young people. But he believed in us, and that was all we ever wanted. And to be honest with you, later on that season we won the double. We suffered in Europe, and I was still coming over to Malta in this time, and every year I would come over to Malta, I would promise you the European Cup, and every year I would come back, and I started to lose some credibility. However, eventually in '99 I had the unbelievable honour of being part of the treble team. But the greatest part of that for me was a clip that I saw over there before, and that was to come over here with these 3 trophies, because I knew I'd promised you that European Cup every single year, and it was great to come over here with it. I won't go on much longer. I'd like to thank the players who I've played with for the last 20 years. I've played with the most incredible football players and some great people who, to be honest with you, I owe so much to. And people say to me, you know, what do you believe you've achieved most in your career? And that is just to be a small part of a successful football team at Manchester United. But really, the other players, they were the stars. They were outstanding players, some great players. And I should mention, you know, David Beckham, who came over with us, who's not with us tonight. Paul Scholes, who's just retired, who I believe to be the best player that I ever played with, and one of the best people that I've ever played with. And I'd like to give him a round of applause myself, to be honest with you. And then there's the most important people, finally, the fans. The Manchester United Supporters Club in Malta is a special place. You are special people. When I decided that it was my time to have a testimonial year, and that was always going to be at the very end of my career, I wanted to do something for the fans that had made my career, you know, so great. The Manchester fans close to Old Trafford, and then the Maltese fans. So I have a promise that I will deliver for you your supporters club to be owned by yourself so that you can enjoy it forevermore. And that is something that in the next 12 months I will honour. It was something that I mentioned to John and to Joseph some 12 to 18 months ago, that it was in my mind. And that is the only way in which I can repay you, to be honest with you, because the time, effort, money that you've given to me over 20 years and to my teammates and to this club, I can't really do enough for you myself, and I can only ever thank you by potentially this small gesture from myself. So thank you very much for coming tonight. I hope you have a great evening, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Gary Neville.
Dear Gary, on behalf of all of us, we'd like to present you with a small token for everything you appreciate to us. We appreciate you a lot. Thank you very much. Can I invite Mr. Dennis Flo, please? Yeah, Dennis, once again, thank you very much for being here. It's not a Scotch whiskey. Thank you for being here. Eric, 2 years ago, we have published a book about the history of our supporters club, and I'm sure you'll appreciate it. Thank you, Eric. Jesse, Larnell. Jesse scored some great goals this season. Even Larnell, one of Larnell's best goals, I'm sure, was that penalty in front of the Cop against our friends from Mosta. We salute them. And Jesse scored some great, fantastic goals, even in the semi-final against Sheffield United, and he told me that that ball actually crossed the line. He just confirmed it. No? Thank you for your presence here.
Good evening, everyone.